Welcome to Practical Talk Time. I'm your host, Usha Kumar. Today I have with me a wonderful author from Wolcott, Connecticut, Michael L. Kilday. He's written several books. In his recent book won the 2013 award from the Connecticut Press Club, and that is Yippie's Lament. And he's here to discuss that book with us.
Thank you for having me, Usha.
Welcome to the show. It is so nice to have you here. In the last time we discussed your 3 books.
My series, Truth Never Changes.
Yeah, Truth Never Changes, Earth Changes. That was the first one. The second one was Truth Never Changes.
Genesis of the Path.
Genesis of the Path, okay. And the third one?
Truth Never Changes, Conceiving a Spiritual Democracy.
All those 3 books were wonderful reading, and I hope people get them so they can read it and really understand some crucial things that they need for their lives. Today we'll talk about your book, the award-winning book. Mm-hmm. I have to tell you, I read that book, and it is such easy reading, nice little stories, and they're all true, I suppose, because you wrote them from your own experiences.
Yes. Yes, I did.
And the book explores the counterculture in the 60s and in the early 70s, right?
Yep.
So was that the hippie generation, or what, or the current baby boomer generation?
Well, we were yippies, and the difference really between a hippie and a yippie was that a yippie was a member of the Youth International Party, as started by Abbie Hoffman and Jerry Rubin. And the yippies were the anti-war protesters, of that era. I mean, if you saw the movie Forrest Gump, and you saw at the Washington Monument at the reflecting pools, that was the yippies. Yeah. Yippies and hippies look basically the same. But I think the hippies themselves were a little bit older, like your older brother would probably have been a hippie.
Oh, so the younger of the group was younger. Yippies. But you had some important message for the world, right? You wanted to change some things?
We wanted to change everything. We took the peace, love, and the hippie credo was peace, love, and forgiveness, pretty much like what Jesus would have taught. The yippies were more politically oriented, where they wanted freedom, they wanted liberty, they wanted self-determination for themselves. No one wanted to, go to Vietnam and offer up their life for something they didn't believe in.
Today, when you say yippie or hippie, they're kind of almost considered derogatory, or sometimes even have a negative connotation, because that is how the government wanted to portray at some time, right?
Yes, and dirty, filthy hippies. It's because we're a thorn in the side. I mean, especially to Nixon. And I have a couple of chapters in there about Nixon and about how we felt about him and his shenanigans, if I could use one of their words, to subvert freedom and democracy for the rest of us.
Your book kind of spans a period of 50 years almost.
Yes.
And you start the book with your first experience on college campus, right?
No.
Where was that?
It wasn't my first experience.
It was not in college?
Yeah, after I had left college.
It was after. Okay.
I really started it in the 80s. And I'll tell you, the reason that I really wrote this book was because my first son was going to high school at the time. And being a former teacher, I would ask him what he learned in school that day. And when he told me what he was learning in history class, I said, no, that didn't happen. I was there. It didn't happen that way. And so I would have to correct them.
So what did he learn? What was being...
Well, how the hippies and the yippies were just, criminal elements of society, that they were just deviants who just did drugs. And
yeah, they challenged authority.
And they just challenged authority, but it was much more than that. They weren't being taught the entire story. They were just only being shown a sliver of that story because it was advantageous for the powers that be to paint them that way, because they didn't want to repeat. They didn't want another generation out in the streets challenging their authority. Mm-hmm. So that's when I started writing the book.
Let's see. Was it also about the Vietnam War?
Yes, it was also about the Vietnam War.
Protests?
Well, I think all wars fought for profit are the same. I mean, the Iraq War was a profit-driven war. There was no principle involved here. Yeah. Just Vietnam, it was a Cold War adventure, that the United States was having, so that they could expand their economic empire. That's how we saw it. That it was that's all it was about. The military-industrial complex. And if you go back...
So they didn't convince you enough in those days, as they did by getting us into the war with Iraq?
Not after I saw Eisenhower's farewell speech in 1960, when he was warning the American public of the military-industrial complex and telling you, don't go that way. And it was kind of like George Washington did much the same thing, yeah, warning the people of the foreign entanglements, and here we were, sending our sons to die in the third world.
In the Far East, yeah.
It wasn't what they wanted.
Mm-hmm. And the war kept going on and on for many years too.
The war went on to 1975. Yeah. And we kind of had our ignominious escape from the war. You remember all the pictures of South Vietnamese people climbing up onto the helicopters when they were leaving the tops of buildings while they were being shot at. Yeah, it wasn't a great exit. Mm-hmm. But that was just part of the experience. There was another side, to the experience.
What was that?
Woodstock, okay. the Summer of Love, which was the bright spot, I think, of the whole thing,
Well, my husband and I still go to that area called Woodstock.
We do.
In New York, just to reminisce. Although we both grew up in India, we were still reading all the news items and all the press articles, yeah, on what was happening here in the U.S., and we were pretty much following it there. And for us, it was a big thing to just go there, and every time we went there, it kind of rained.
It rained when I was there too.
All the time, right?
Yeah.
And we'd just sit there nostalgic and talking about all the old things that happened there. I don't even know if the current generation of Americans know that.
I think a lot do, because it was widely publicized. I think that it's kind of the last, the final Woodstock was kind of a disaster, and I kind of put a little bit about that in the book because my son was, I think he was like 18 or 19 years old when, yeah, that was 1999. So
what happened? So
it was a disaster. Really was. They're charging kids $4 for a bottle of water. Part of the compound was burned to the ground. So kind of left a bad taste.
After that, you don't want to go there.
I doubt that there would be a repeat after that experience. Mm. But I went there when I was 19 years old, mm-hmm. and I'll sit in the mud in the rain and watch Janis Joplin and The Who, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Why not? I mean, at 19 years old. I mean, when you're 19 years old, you don't much care. I'm 64 now. I don't think I could take that. You know, to be sitting in the cold.
I'm thinking about that generation of people. Are they satisfied with their lives now, or are they disappointed with their lives? And if so, what's the reason?
I think the baby boomer generation has been polarized in so many different directions that it depends upon who you talk to.
I see.
Because some of them might be Tea Party right now. Some of them might be like me.
And what is that?
Is pretty far to the left of the spectrum, you know, almost to the point of anarchy, because I found that I can't trust anybody. I can't trust anybody with my freedom. And that's very upsetting, actually.
It is upsetting that so many policies are being made in Washington, and they've been happening in the past several years, that they're not really good for the people.
No.
In terms of freedom, really. But they talk about freedom as if, to be able to carry guns is freedom. Yeah, that is one of the freedoms, but more important freedoms have been taken away, right, at this point?
A lot of freedoms. I mean, the freedom not to be observed on the street by cameras. There, in the Constitution, there's Bill of Rights. There's no actual, you know, word, you know, verbiage that says "Thou shalt not be put on camera" when thou is not aware of it. But
no, with the Patriot Act and everything else, we've gotten a lot of things that are there that should not be there, and
probably
people are not noticing it, or not even aware of it, I guess.
I think that they look upon it now as a necessary evil. There's an awful lot of people. Look at the Occupy movement. They don't like it. I'm on Twitter a lot, and I'm associated. You know, I talk to the Occupy people and the anonymous people, and they're much younger than I am, quite often, and they don't like anything that's going on. They don't like Republicans or Democrats.
The Occupy Wall Street people, to me, appear very much like your Yippies in those days, because they don't really have a leader. They want to just address some points or some problems with the government or corporations. But then I think they ought to get organized better and really have a leader with a third party or something.
Well, it's like herding cats.
That's harder to do.
That's hard. It's hard to organize anarchists. I don't think it's ever been done throughout history.
See, that is the problem. I think in our previous show, when we were talking about your 3 books, the series, we were talking about individual thinking, people being able to think for themselves.
Yes.
But then therein lies a problem of trying to get them together too.
Yes.
Where people can think alike and follow a leader, then it's just easier to have that group going.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It was very difficult then. It's just as difficult now. There's so much information thrown at you. Sometimes you don't know what to think.
Yeah, the baby boomer generation. If there is a bulk group of them really disappointed now, what are they disappointed with their achievements, or what they thought their life was going to be like,